Yeah, to invite me.
Greetings, Kimberly Nelson and Paul Nelson here.
Hello.
Oh, hello. Okay, let me do something different. How you doing? Smiling faces.
Okay. Coming
That's
along.
always welcome. That is always welcome
Yes.
in this space. A smiling face. We'll take it.
All right, great.
So we'll go ahead and get started. If those who are joining us, including staff, can type your name and your neighborhood or who you represent in the chat. And that way, that's how we'll keep record of who was here today, if you don't mind. So give folks a few minutes to do that. Any latecomers that we might have, let them kind of trickle in. So right now, welcome everyone. We're asking our participants to put their name and who they represent into the chat so we can make sure we keep a record of everyone who actually showed up versus who signed up. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started. So thank you all for coming and welcome to one of many community conversations that the city of Charlotte has been hosting around the Charlotte Future 2040 Comprehensive Plan. We started these series back in September, and although some of you might be new to the process or new to the forum, it's okay. The whole purpose around these, we kind of had three different parts: a speaker series where we invited experts from around the country to talk about the plan. And then we had listening sessions with groups that we thought were important to hear their voice from, or folks could request a meeting to meet with us, but we were all calling them community conversations. And that started last year about September. So this is just an extension of that series, and we're happy that you were able to join us. We hope you have visited our website at cltfuture2040.com. If you haven't already, somebody put it in the chat so you can review information about the process, how to stay engaged, and just really take some time to learn how the plan relates to you. And so what the purpose of tonight is, in these smaller conversations, is to not be so structured, to create kind of a safe environment for people to share their thoughts. No question is too big or too small or a stupid question, as people might say sometimes, but a question is a question and it's important to you and we want to hear it. And so what happens after tonight with these conversations, what we've been doing, we have a couple of staff members that are on the line. If they could come off camera and just wave, just so you can see who all is staff. They are taking notes, and those comments that we hear tonight are documented in our public comment sheet that's on our website. So everything that we say or talk about related to the plan is reflected within those comments that will be considered by our elected and appointed officials who make the ultimate decision about this plan document. So I want to go over a couple of ground rules for tonight, just our virtual meeting guidelines. Please mute your audio when you're not speaking. I'm sure you've all done this a couple of times on Zoom all day. Use only one source of audio, your computer or your phone. That helps to prevent the echo or feedback. Don't put your phone on hold. That also helps with the sound and the audio. We also save the chats to make sure that we're recording the conversations accurately. So I just wanted you all to be aware of that, full transparency, and be respectful of other attendees during the session. Always think of others as you're speaking and sharing your comments, and that everybody's perspective and their opinion is important to them, and therefore we want to hear it. Staff and you all can hear it as well. So let's be respectful and mindful of our comments as we're making them tonight. And so I wanted to start play a video that kind of captures what the plan is, kind of the purpose of it, and how it might impact you. Again, the planning process is we started it in 2018, and some of my teammates will say it started way before then, including myself. But engagement has been ongoing and continuous in this process. And today is just one of the many ways we've been continuing to engage around this particular initiative. So I'll play the video and then we'll jump right into questions and comments from you all.
Charlotte is America's Queen City, a diverse community that continues to experience rapid growth. Yet many communities in Charlotte have not enjoyed the benefits of thoughtful planning. Without a citywide plan for growth, these communities are often passed over for valuable investments in policy support, creating inequities and a lack of balance. The Charlotte Future 2040 Comprehensive Plan is taking a new, community-driven approach to guiding growth in all of Charlotte's communities by focusing on 10 types of places unique to Charlotte. Planning the right mix of place types so all areas of Charlotte have a variety of places to live, work, and play can help us ensure equitable growth over time. Input from diverse communities has helped us prioritize access to quality housing, employment, services, and amenities for all residents. So, what happens next? We need as many people like you to provide feedback on the draft plan. A plan including community comments will be adopted by City Council. The community will share their vision, improving existing places or new places in their neighborhoods by mapping the place types. While the community is mapping place types, the city will be finalizing the Unified Development Ordinance and a new set of zoning districts that will correspond to each place type. Using the future place type map as a guide, communities will help decide which of the corresponding zoning districts will apply to individual parcels within a given place. And we'll be following up to ensure that all of Charlotte has a voice in deciding what types of investments their area needs. The success of this plan relies on you. Your input and feedback can still help shape the plan and its implementation. Advancing equity and breaking down barriers to opportunity is essential for all of our communities to thrive. We are living in historic times, and now is the time to work together for a more inclusive and sustainable future. The City of Charlotte is committed to implementing a 2040 comprehensive plan that is inclusive of feedback from all Charlotte residents. You're invited to join us and engage in a deeper understanding of how the plan will shape Charlotte's future. Visit cltfuture2040.com to learn more.
So with that, as I mentioned again, this is a very relaxed conversation. I'll open it up to questions, comments from our participants. Don't be shy. Mr. Ali,
Okay.
you have a comment? Uh-oh.
Hello, this is Vernetta Mitchell. How are you today?
Doing good. How about you, Ms. Mitchell?
I'm doing well. I am with the Far East Neighborhoods Coalition, short for FINCO. I have a question about area plans. When developing or receiving input from the community, and FINCO has been providing some not only assessment, but some input as well on all of the important areas in the plan. Were there any considerations for the previous area plans that were developed in the mid 2000s for the Rocky River area plan, the East Side Strategy Plan, which kind of falls short of where the Far East Charlotte area is? Has there been any consideration for those plans, or can you tell us what has been done with some of those plans?
Thank you for the question, Ms. Mitchell. Yes. So before we began this process at the very start, we looked at all of the area plans and compiled kind of an assessment of what really works in these plans that we know we want to apply to the rest of Charlotte, what's not working so well. So it's kind of like a policy audit. And it's actually, that's what we call the document. It's on our website in the resources section of our website, and it documents all of those 80 plus plans that the city has. And those plans that you mentioned were definitely in the mix. So there are some of those strategies, particularly around creating plays, preserving parks, supporting and building strong neighborhoods, creating access to more transportation options. Those types of things were taken into consideration in developing this larger plan. So yes, but if you want to take a look at that policy audit, just to see what else we considered and how it kind of matches up with where we are with the plan, yeah, you can do that. But yes, and someone put the link in the chat for ease of, so you won't have to go searching for it.
I can also add to that. It's good to see you, Miss Mitchell.
Hey, how are you?
Well, I'm very well. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, so just to quickly add to that, one of the things that we did in the comprehensive plan document is to summarize some of what Alicia just said, but also the process for doing that going into the future. So from page 304, I think it's page 304 to 307, to give you an idea of how we're going to incorporate some of those area plans into this plan, but also how we criteria for retiring some of them and generating and updating new ones, which will cover the Far East neighborhood area, because I think that that's really where your question is going. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Alicia, this is good to be back out there again, chatting with you guys. You know, during all this process, these years that we've been sitting around and trying to put the plans together, when look back at what actually ended up to be shown as the plan for 2040, it seemed that we are implementing pretty much what everybody was asking for, but I'm not sure if the way and the path we are taking to do it is actually acceptable for everybody. It seems like in the last few years, obviously we had a lot of new people have moved into Charlotte, and they are the people that they participate more on talking their desires of what we want to do in Charlotte. A lot of people who actually have lived in Charlotte for many years, they may be been left out, and we making decision is just like all of a sudden people sitting down in their homes and notice there's a bulldozer in the neighborhood taking something down to put something else in there. I don't think we've reached out enough to those people. And as the previous plan, granted that you said you've been considering the previous plan, the 2020 that we had, people plan their lives, they plan their investment based on what was placed in here. And looking at what is in place right now, even though it is what pretty much everybody who was participating was asking to be able to see the mass transportation, having the parks, having the multi-families and everything. But it seemed like all of a sudden we took the white brush without figuring out how we're going to put that one over there. And we just going straight through the zoning to allow all of these happening without making sure any of these actually are in place before you do them. So if we want to make changes on any zoning, do we make sure we have the other things that was already within that zoning request? If do we have enough parks in there? Do we have enough schools in there in that area? Is the mass transportation is already in place before we just go and start putting all the other stuff that it comes into all of a sudden, okay, we're gonna have multi-families placed in here without having all the other elements that is required to be able to allow a successful multifamily in that area to be in place. That was one of the main concerns I have when I look at the 2040 plans and coming up in front of the city council and staff going to be voting on them. It just makes me concerned at what is the process? Is it something that is being thoughtful? Are we thinking about making sure that when these things get approved, we have a right process in place to make sure all the requirements are in place before any zoning changes comes up?
Thank you for your comments, and what you just described is one of the biggest pain points that we have been hearing from the community around the piecemeal approach, right? The land use says one thing, people envision it to be something, and then when development happens, is inconsistent with what people thought would happen. And so what this plan actually does is it updates and provide a clear, more transparent and predictable path for how development should happen in the future. And the way it's set up is to do it in a couple of different phases. So with the comp plan, it establishes the overall vision. Here's how we want to grow. Here's the type of places that we want. And here are some policies, projects, and programs around housing, transportation. We even work with CMS on their planning, water, green space, Mecklenburg Parks and Recreation. All of us were on the team thinking about how can we create complete communities and be really thoughtful about it, and not just plan for development, but think about the investments we need to make to accommodate that growth, to your point, with the transportation. And then working really closely with the community on mapping what that looks like. The plan sets the policy, and then we work closely with the neighborhoods to Ms. Vanetta's point, really getting into that granular conversation about here's the type of places that we want, the housing goes here, transportation goes here, the greenways go here, and then taking it to that third phase of rethinking how we grow in the future and applying the zoning. And that's the Unified Development Ordinance project. So I know it seems fragmented, but it's thoughtful in that it's an incremental way to rethink and retool and broaden our toolbox about how we grow in the future, to be more thoughtful, to be more transparent and predictable in providing the vision and the tools to implement that vision. But I would be really interested to know, and maybe it's an offline conversation, of who you think we haven't reached out to, what voices that we need to make sure that we're bringing to the table in these processes. I really would like to get your feedback and just have a conversation about that. Because again, we want as many people at the table to talk about this process. And it doesn't stop today. This plan is envisioned to be a living document that we test, measure, and adapt over time. So how we engage now, we can get better and better and better to make sure that we continue to do it as we move forward. So I'd be really interested in talking to you about that engagement and who we need to bring to the table. And thank you.
Absolutely. I'd be very willing. By chance, just question, Are you offering these community input sessions in any other language than English?
We can, we have.
Okay.
Yes,
I
we
think
have, and we can
that's
hire a
exactly-
consultant to do it too. So if you have somebody that we need to speak to, we'll make those accommodations.
Okay. So the FINCO has been meeting, and we have a lot of passionate people around specific topics for our area. And some of our key points, and there are many, and I'm not going to dominate the conversation, but some of our key points is development. So development is happening faster than there's money in the city or the county's budget, and we'll just talk about the city, in the city's budget to develop the infrastructure and the transportation. So there's a long period of time that we have to deal with an increase of residents in an area, and no telling how long it's going to take before the city, one, has money to build sidewalks so people can get around, or two, if the money's available, how long it will take from the time that we've increased our capacity or our density in the area before those sidewalks are built. And sidewalks are just one example. When you live in FINCO, you have to have a car. There's one express bus that comes through here, and the express buses have a very limited schedule. So you basically either have to have a car, or you have to, put thumbs up or call Uber. So mobility and connectivity to try to get to where you need to be any place in the city is a huge concern. And the more you develop out here without thinking about that infrastructure, with people moving in and being able to get around, is a huge concern. The other major concern that we have is we always concerned about the environment and the tree canopy. So most of this area out here for a long time, I mean, we knew development was coming. It's not like it was a surprise, but it's just like, okay, so where do we get to talk about what's important to us out here? And this is a great forum to do that. So the tree canopy is really important. And what are developers doing to make sure that we maintain some of the tree canopy, and that the developments are built in a way that are pleasing to the eye, versus just plopping houses certain places because there's an acre or acre and a half of land available to throw in 4 houses. And it really just does not make sense to have houses there. Prime example is Harrisburg Road. There are 3 houses being built on a curve at an intersection. And I feel sorry for the people who are going to move there, because I don't know how they're going to get in and out without the fear of being sideswiped coming around that curve. So there's no thought about why those houses were built there, the way that street is set up. That's just one example of making sure that the development makes sense of where it's happening. Bike lanes, everyone has different hobbies, different interests, and everyone likes to do different things. But we have a lot more cyclists that are just, and everyone's becoming more health conscious around everything. So we have a lot more cyclists. It's almost impossible to do out here the way the roads are without any bike lanes there. And I'm sure there's one more that I can't quite think of off the top of my head, but the zoning and the UDO, it is going to be, for us, it is going to be very, very important that the residents in Far East have an opportunity to discuss and hear and give feedback about new development that's coming to this area, either something that's already permitted or something that is pending permits, and where that development is being built, what type of development is being built. And we still want to have that community input process so that we can potentially influence some minor changes to that development, either in, how far it's set back off of the street, how it looks whether or not there's going to be turn lanes, whether or not there's going to be a connection of sidewalks, all those things are going to be really important. So it's very important that that UDO process has that community input, and that the community input is taken with serious consideration on what works here. We haven't talked a lot about commercial development. There's not a lot of commercial development per se out here, but we would really be willing to have those types of discussions. And that's why having those conversations would be important. Thank you
Okay.
for listening.
Absolutely, thank you. We'll go to Global Impact Industries, who didn't change their name.
Yes, I forgot. Yeah, this is Kimberly. You were probably, a couple of you all may know me, Ali, as Edmonds, Kimberly Edmonds, but I'm married now, Kimberly Nelson. So this is my husband. We're both partners with Global Impact Industries. But I want to kind of add to what Ali had spoke about, and even Vernetta. I've been a citizen of Charlotte for almost 19 years. I come from Flint, Michigan. My family from Haiti by way of Nigeria. So I have a lot of connection to wanting to, you know, just drive the intercultural experience here in the city of Charlotte. And I was one of I was a developer, you know, put together a team to go for the Eastland property. Initially, I was one of the developers that went off for the property. And Ali was actually one of my partners with that project. And I, as a, you know, minority, one of few that don't have the opportunity, that is seeking for that opportunity to have land tenure for commercial space, I have the know-with-all and the team to do something such as of this nature. But I have to be honest with you, opportunity cost hit me really bad going through that experience because of, you know, I felt hijacked in some kind of ways of how things transpired with that. And even to this point, I know it's not what initially was set out to be, you know, so it's a lot of changes that I've known for the developer to have taken place when it was awarded. But anyways, I'm putting that out there because my experience as a citizen here in Charlotte is real. And one of the things that I'm just very passionate about, and I'm gonna have to say this, I was the vice chair for the 12th Congressional District for 2 terms here. So I understood the lay of the land in terms of just the equity and what was going on with the stakeholders and all kinds of dynamics that was lacking as it pertains to racial disparities. It's major here. So I'm gonna say what I'm really passionate about is making sure not only within the United States, but Charlotte, North Carolina, is that we have intentional transformative wealth. We need a distinctive focus on democracy, our cultural identity, and continental integration. If we can push education as a strong link with economic opportunity and improving our performance in that space with infrastructure and the welfare through policies, let that clearly be made known, we can improve in the areas of that. There are things that the African Union focuses on as far as an agenda that involves the diaspora, connecting back to the continent of Africa. Charlotte has a huge, diverse community as it pertains to citizens being here from Africa. And connecting, even aligning ourselves with even some of the things, the sustainability development goals that the UN actually focused on. Just again, the common good of bringing the position of those of African descent together to be able to create wealth. We have no land tenure. The other thing is, as it pertains to our focus in terms of advocating for or lobbying for people of African descent to have a space in technology. I mean, in order for us to compete on a level, we have to have infrastructure. We need digital equity. And if we can engage our residents to impact, I don't know how we can do this with survey relations or whatever, just to help drive the area to build incubators. I don't care, even now, whoever's awarded with Eastland, if we can identify a location on the east side as well as on the west side or wherever the need is, for us to establish these smart center incubators, and we can drive a technology space, you know, with an administrative plan that first focuses on workforce development and intercultural exchange opportunities. I mean, we can even address some of the issues with the prison reform space. And I was just a part of the National League of Cities, so they're even just sitting in the meetings and understanding the cry of many cities and municipalities. This is something that they were even pushing. It's just our focus around reparations. And not in a way of just like, hey, slave history has had its, you know, it's affected us and just give us a check. No, we just want to be able to create wealth. So if we can tie that around infrastructure, far as even with our small businesses, that would be the ideal situation. And I am looking for, and I'm ready actually. So I'm letting you know, I would love to be at the table to have these discussions. And I'm a connector. I'm very significant. I have valuable relationships that will be willing, but there is also an internal affairs that needs to be corrected with our city administration. And that's real talk from what I've experienced. And so I'm just trying to regain. I'm actually back. That's why I'm so grateful for this conversation that we're having. But I was knocked down hard after experiencing that Eastland redevelopment project. Seriously. And no one understood the dynamics of that because we're moving along. And I was not included in that process. And I love this city. My family has roots since 1981 in this city. Right there there's Calvary Christian Church right off of Kilbourne and Central Avenue. I served on the Chamber of Commerce as the legislative chair for 3 years, advocating for this opportunity for the East Corridor. So I'm just saying this to you all. We need some intentional, transformative wealth opportunities, and we can connect that back, aligning with the UN goals, sustainability development goals, and the African Union sustainability development goals, and tie in some driving trade and commerce. I've seen some stuff happen in high places, and I've been there. And I'm sharing this with you all just because I don't want this to be rhetoric. I don't want it to be conversation. I just want us to be very intentional about really making this happen. And so I'm leaving that at my piece, and we can definitely, I love what Vernetta is talking about on the east side of Charlotte. We can make that happen clearly. Bishop Claude Alexander has a location site that we had an R400 conference. I helped bring the ambassador here. I was on that steering committee so that we can help drive commerce and create some opportunity. That's a key stakeholder right in the east side of Charlotte that we can build off of. And I already know about the $1.9 trillion budget. Charlotte this state has been awarded, you know, with this. I know we have to allocate that, but we have to find a ways how to be able to lobby that up and make sure it falls in the right pockets for both our, and it's not just Black African Americans. This is our Asian community and our Latino community. And East Charlotte speaks of that's the largest diverse intercultural area. So that's an opportunity that we have in this Charlotte Future 2040 comprehensive plan. So that's my piece. And even on that, and I'm sorry, my husband may have something to add.
I just want to say thank you all. It's an opportunity to be here. It's my first time. And obviously I'm from the African descent. And I met my wife through the African Union. So I have a very strong relationship with the continent as well, with most of the embassies here in the United States. So if you do need anything, any assistance, any help with regards to Africa, feel free to indulge me and I'll be able to help in any way I can, because what I always talk to about my wife is that everything we do in life, is born out of one thing and one thing only, and that's communication, And then if you have the right people, communicating your goals, your intentions, your visions, you'll get where you want to go. And most of the pain points that we would find, even with dealing with the African continent, may be born out of the cultural differences we share. And then especially in terms of communication as well. So I just want to let you guys know that I'm available and I love Charlotte. I grew up most of my time in the United States in Washington, DC. I attended Howard University and I worked with Congressman Wynne when I was there. So I do understand, some of the cultural, side of, United States. And so thank you so much. And I look forward to working with you all.
Thank you all. And I just wanted to point out the passion and that has been shown in your statements, and we really appreciate that. And these conversations aren't just about us receiving information about the plan, but it's also about connecting people in our community. Like you all just made that connection around how you might support each other in this work in building a stronger Charlotte. So I want to thank you all for that. We're going to try to get some others on the call engaged. I see a Miss, is it Jasmine? Am I mispronouncing it? Or Thomas, do you have anything that you would like to add? Or Danielle to the conversation?
I do. Appreciate you sponsoring this, and I do hope we have some additional opportunities to all get together. I think possibly we could break this gigantic document into sections that each of us have some input in. These individuals brought up some great points, and I think giving them an opportunity to work on the appropriate parts of the plan would be wonderful. And I did go to some of the previous community engagements that you've had around the city. So I have seen some of this report, this project as it came together, and it's very aspirational and a great read. But I did have some questions. I know the big headline that's been on everything has been the infill neighborhoods and single family zoning. And I guess I won't belabor that because I think everybody in our neighborhood and the neighborhood adjoining us, which I'm also here speaking for, is calling their city council members. So I think everybody's done that. So I won't belabor that point because I think there are some concerns about how that gets implemented. But I did have a bigger question of, like, this really points to the 10-minute walk in a lot of ways. I think sidewalks and all that are extremely important, but the UDO and the USDG, which is the Urban Street Design Guidelines, which kind of dictates how the grid gets built and kind of development happens, it really pushes you more towards cars. And I know here, at least around where we are, they've been working on a bike network and a trail network. And that's something that really appeals to us. It seems like 10-minute walking everywhere. Could it not be expanded? Because there's a lot of things like malls and office complexes and things that may make that 5-minute or 10-minute walk unobtainable to reach the goal of the complete community. So are we not looking towards bike trails and other things to kind of expand that radius a little further out to give us an opportunity to reach all of those things within, say, a 5 or 10-minute bike ride? So as we make other transportation options a little more appealing than hopping in the car to drive to Harris Teeter or whatever's down the street.
Thank you, Thomas, for that question. The 10-minute neighborhood idea does include other modes beyond walking. It says in the policy and I'm gonna be a nerd about it, on page 98, it says 10-minute walk, bike, or transit or short transit ride. So it does include those. And what I will say, there's been a lot of conversation about, is that really achievable? Or some of our subdivisions are so large that it takes probably 10 to 15 minutes to get from the back of it to the front of it. And so have we thought about how that might work? And what I will say is that the way we approached it is that, one, that's an aspirational goal, to your point, something that we want to achieve in our neighborhoods over the next 20 years. There are a lot of neighborhoods that already meet that criteria. And one, we would start with saying, hey, here are the areas where we already achieved that. How do we make sure we continue to support that? And then look beyond what we have to what we know makes sense to achieve. What types of investments, what types of development decisions and regulations do we need to put in place to make that more achievable in other places? And so what we've been doing while developing this plan and really thinking about this idea, there's a lot of other plans that connect to this process that we're working on. For example, the transit plan, the system plan, they're updating that, and that's the plan that talks about major transit investments, and then the bus priority plan, where they're identifying strategic corridors for bus service that creates these hubs that connect people from their neighborhoods, from their jobs to these transit hubs, so people won't rely on their cars as much. So we're collaborating as we're putting these lofty kind of aspirational goals about being more increasing accessibility, making sure that we actually align our vision with our investment and our strategic planning on these other initiatives like bus and rail, and even with our parks. MEC Playbook, Mecklenburg County is in the process of developing their park and recreation plan. They also have a 10-minute neighborhood idea that connects to the comp plan. And it's kind of a testament to how we are really thinking comprehensively, really collaborating on not just providing a vision, but also aligning our investment and other strategic thinking around those goals as well. But thank you for that
So
question.
maybe I can jump in on that as well. Alisa, and transportation is definitely a passion of mine, so that's a very good
yes,
subject.
it is.
But you know, one of the challenges of the comprehensive land use plan is that you try to do everything, but then you also don't want it to be overwhelming. You don't want it to be underwhelming either. You want to make sure that you touch everything that's important. And one of those areas, obviously, is where you're focusing so much on where what land use pattern is. You also want to make sure that you are in sync with other plans. So Alicia said it very well. So right now we are talking about this transformation and mobility network. And one of the elements of that is improvement of frequency of services on about 22 bus routes. If we're never able to go to a referendum or sales tax increase or anything like that, that's one that is doable within the life of this plan, perhaps even sooner rather than later. Now you do that where you're able to get out from your subdivision or your development and be able to get to a transit service within a short time. The challenge with transit service provision and single family housing, however, is that it's very hard to serve areas that are predominantly single family versus if it's compact development. You can research that anywhere. It can be served, but it's very expensive and it's very difficult to be able to do it, especially because you have all the cul-de-sacs, you have the court system and all of that. So it's very hard. But when you have a compact development, that 10 in its neighborhood is achievable when transit services are of more frequency and close enough to you. Charlotte is also it's done a very good job. We have a 2017, I believe, Charlotte Walks plan and a 2017 Charlotte Bikes as well. And a lot of the policies in those documents have been incorporated into this plan in order to be able to make walkability possible. There is also I think the Charlotte Walks plan said that in 2015, Charlotte had about 2,000 gaps of sidewalks in terms of 2,000 miles of gaps in sidewalks, so to speak. Part of this is if we were to set this goal, 10-minute neighborhood ahead of us, say we will have 10-minute neighborhoods in Charlotte over the next 20 years, that should also be driving our capital investment. Therefore, you have a voice during budget season to be asking council, for support in terms of transportation investments in your different areas. So that's really very important to keep in mind that this plan, when it talks about 10-minute neighborhoods, it's not just looking at this plan alone by itself, but how does it connect with other mobility plans that we have currently and that we're moving towards. But the goal is in 20 years, we want to be able to have most parts of Charlotte where people can walk and bike and take transit without having to drive to get to essential amenities, like take a vaccine or, or go to the doctor, things of that nature. Thank you.
Mr. Taiwo, if I could ask you a quick question related to that. I'm just not 100% sure, but I know we passed some years ago, I've been here for a long, long time, but we passed some years ago a big funding for bike lanes in Charlotte. I want to say it was part of the transportation plan or something that we approved some time ago. I think it was I want to say it was $1 billion or something crazy worth of transportation dollars. Aren't we working on a major portion of those bike lanes right now just to kind of interconnect the community?
We are, but the challenge of it though is that it's incremental. So, every 2 years, we raise about $100 million in bond for transportation. And so if you think about it over the next 10 years, that pretty much generates about $500 million, or is it 10 or something, whatever the math is. But over a 10-year period, if you raise $100 and some million every 2 years, there's only so far it can go. And so that's supposed to go towards maintaining the roadways, supposed to extend some bike plans that we have, and also sidewalks. So you are right that some years ago we developed the plan, but we've only been able to do them incrementally and then apportion them as necessary to different parts of the city. This past year, we focused on certain parts of the city where we have challenges with transportation, but also with sidewalks. And we're going to continue to do that over time. But the plan here is hopefully a comprehensive plan upon adoption will help to drive some of those investments into areas where they are most needed.
I have this question for you, since you're more involved than all of us. If you have a bunch of tools and you want to put a program or a little town or a little neighborhood together, would you start with putting a mass transportation for it first, or would you put the sidewalk first? Would you build up a park first, or would you worry about putting a bicycle lane and making people to travel 10 miles to come to the first store to buy a grocery or something? Or would you put a smaller store within the community? These communities that we have, the way they are built, we are just constantly working of creating the main arteries to connect them together. Whereas if we can be able to provide small communities within themselves, then we do not need to have so much of these traffic and transportation and connectivity to other places. If every small little community within itself is self-sufficient, has a walking distance to the park, and walking distance to the smallest store that you can pick up daily fresh vegetables, daily fresh meat, that what you have, and make it easier, it would cut down so much of people want to bring their cars on the road. The people, they're going to need to have transportation. And a lot of places, we don't need these big buses to go. We can maybe have the CAT to look at smaller transportation, electrical transportation, can feed the community that they're a lot smaller. The majority of these buses that they travel, there's hardly anybody in it, except a certain time of the day when people go to work and when they come back. I mean, these are the thoughts to look at to see where is it actually we want to invest. Without the sidewalk, we've been fighting to put a sidewalk in here for over 30 years. It took me 25 years to put a little piece of sidewalk on Sardis Road North. With the grace of God, we ask everybody, please put a little sidewalk. And it still is not gonna, you go on Sardis Road North from Monroe Road to the Sardis Lane, we still got a whole place that doesn't have a side, and all of those neighborhood kids, they can never walk safely to the stores to go over there. I mean, sidewalk, I think, is one of the most essential things to do. Parks are essential, providing small little opportunity for people to be able to do work from home, to even if they somebody can even bake some bread and sell it over there in their own neighborhood, plant some vegetable and sell them over there. That helps the communities. It helps cut down on the traffic. It helps to keep the communities together.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ali, for your comments. David or Miko or Danielle, you have any questions or comments? Not all at once. Thomas came off mute. He's gonna take your turn.
Well, I didn't want to step in front of anybody else in case they had a question, but can I ask about, I guess, the intent of allowing, since the major issue here, and at least in the neighborhoods around here, is allowing various duplexes and potentially triplexes and quadplexes and other things in neighborhoods. The idea is obviously to provide additional housing options within existing communities and increase density. I get that. But it's really not going to create affordable housing in most of these communities. I mean, they're selling townhomes up the road from me. They tore down a house near here and they're selling townhomes for more than my house is going for. So it seems to me that you're just creating an opportunity for people to go into existing communities, tear down a house and build 3 houses or 2 houses or 3 townhomes or 2 duplexes or whatever they can fit on that lot with, if they have the lot width to do so. How is that really increasing affordability in the city here?
So I think in time we'll probably tag team on this one. And I'll just kick it off. So one, we want to be clear about how the conversation started about even talking about duplexes, triplexes, and quads. During this engagement process, we had a stakeholder group and definitely some public meetings. And what we kept hearing from neighborhoods and business owners, developers, and everybody from across the city say that as Charlotte grows, we need to address the lack of housing options. Where is that missing middle? And that provides housing options and will increase our housing stock as we grow. As we know, over the next 20 years, Charlotte is expected to grow by 400,000 people. And to your point, yes, it's about density and increasing those housing options, but depending on where it is, because land drives cost, is where and if it is affordable. So nowhere in the plan does it say density equals affordability, but what it does say is that it starts to address the concern about supply and demand. And if you have more in your supply and the diversity of housing stock in your supply, then the demand goes down and the prices will likely go down as well. So that's one way to kind of tie the two. With the fourplexes, so the duplexes, triplexes, and quads, there are some fourplexes that we're proposing. All of these housing units are available or currently you can build them today. Duplexes on the corners, they're allowed today. Triplexes and quads on a tier, they're all allowed today. So they're not new, and some of our older neighborhoods have a lot of that housing stock, probably more of that housing stock than any other part of the city. So you just don't know that it's there because it looks just like a house. And that's what we're proposing, that when and if these housing types are built within a community, it's built within a footprint that's similar to what's there and the character of that structure looks similar to the rest of the area. Now, do we need to tighten up the language to make that more clear? Yes.
Probably yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and we will. And Ty talk about it. Look, he's just jumping at it just to get
Yeah.
to build up. He's dying.
Yeah, because okay. So I see. I hear that phrase a lot. Density does not equal affordability, and it sounds so simple, so catchy, and so. But it is not necessarily true. It depends on the type of density. If the density is a mix of housing, like single family, detached or attached, townhomes, twin homes, duplexes, if the density is made up of different types of housing, then it really can result in affordability. But here is a bigger thing though. It's about life cycle housing and how people don't have to lose their relationships because they age or because they downsize. So even if you live in a Myers Park or a South Park and your house is $1 million and there's a townhouse next to you that goes for half of that, you don't have to stay in that $1 million home once you downsize or once the kids go to college or go away from home and you just want to have a smaller place to live in. You can move into that townhouse that may be half, or it may not be affordable to everyone, but it provides you that life cycle housing that you can move into and it's affordable to you, but you are able to age in place and stay in place and not lose relationships. Like Alicia said, the challenge is really in those parts of the city where land values are lower, that we need to make sure that developers are not taking advantage of going there, picking those up, tearing down homes and putting homes for rent, thereby displacing vulnerable residents. So while the comprehensive plan has a lot of language around vulnerable residents and we map it, we want to make sure that we tighten that language and include even additional languages in there that will make sure that while places may gentrify because of development, they don't have to necessarily result in displacement of residents and businesses. And the way I tell the story is this: if you have a barber shop in a particular location, the likelihood is that most people who patronize that barber shop come from that vicinity. So if you displace those residents, you are in essence displacing that business. And so how can we make sure that even as places improve, we keep people in place? So one thing that you're going to see in a revised plan document, as we've been hearing, is how can we, as we talk about housing diversity throughout the city, how can we really make sure that we also have stronger policies around anti-displacement that will keep our vulnerable population in place? Let me end with this. The missing middle is very important. It may not necessarily be what's affordable to a lot of people, but I'll tell you why it's important. It is not multifamily. People often say it's multifamily. Multifamily, when you say that, is a block of apartments, 50 units, 20 units, 12 units, and all of that. It is not, and neither is it single family. It's that middle between multifamily apartments, and nothing wrong with apartments, and single family homes that firefighters, police officers, sometimes are teachers or administrative assistants at work. That's what's missing. And right now, the Charlotte is number one when it comes to baby boomers. And what we've been told right now by North Carolina State is that 1 out of every 4 Charlotteans would crack the age of 60 by 2030. That's just in 10 years. Most people in that age bracket don't want to live in huge single family detached homes. They want to live in smaller places like twin homes or duplex or triplexes. And then on the other hand is that we're having a lot of millennial population in our city who also don't want to live in those bigger areas, bigger housing stock. So how can we diversify the housing stock we have, regardless of where people choose to live in the city? That really is the question. But while that is a great idea and a great concept, I believe that the unintended consequences may be that people are displaced, and we don't want that to happen. Hence why I will say it again, a revised version of the plan will likely include stronger languages that will protect people from being displaced, whether they live in the east side or they live on the west side or they live on the north side of town. And we're going to make sure that you're able to revise that. You'll review that with us as well.
Well, that's great. But hand in hand with that, how do you provide the opportunities for people to live in some of those Myers Park and other more affluent areas without providing some sort of governmental assistance or incentives to developers or something to provide housing at a market rate that makes sense in places where it doesn't exist today? And market conditions won't allow a duplex or a quad or any of those types to be, quote, affordable.
Really good question. Again, I will not take time. I know it's after 6, but so the former vice president of commercial and multifamily real estate with Crescent Communities. He and I were on a panel last year when we were discussing this whole housing diversity thing, and here is how he explained it. So you have 2 houses, like in Myers Park, for example, on 2 separate lots. One is $1 million. And the lot next door, maybe it's not a house, but it's it's a vacant lot next door. You can actually have a developer that can put 4 4plexes or triplexes or 4 units of housing on that lot next door and sell them for $250,000 each at $1 million, the entire unit, the entire development, but at $250,000 each. We do have developers in Charlotte today who can actually do that and are willing to do that to maximize the number of units. Unfortunately, in North Carolina, we don't regulate design of buildings. We don't, but most developers also don't want to put something for quality out there. And so on our side is that as government, we can incentivize that. We cannot force them to do that. We know that market forces are at play. But there are ways we can incentivize that by either expediting the process for them to be able to do it in a timely manner that will maybe cut down a couple months out of the process of pulling permits and things of that nature so that they can put that there. But it will not necessarily bring down the value of the house next door, but it does allow some people to be able to move into certain affluent areas who may not be able to afford a $500,000 house on its own. But if it's a $200,000 and $300,000 unit, that's 3 2-bedrooms together with other units, they can still live in that same area and have access to schools and other, good amenities in life. So that kind of how we explained it, and that's his expertise. So, and I tend to see that our role as government is how can we help you make that happen, which is why we're talking about this policy, because if this policy is not in place, there's no way that developer can do that.
And thank you, Tyrone and Thomas, for that conversation. And so that gets back to the original or one of the points that I brought up in the fact that the community in which these types of developments may be built, that community needs to have input, because that community needs to have some sort of influence or at least have their voices heard about the design of the building, the look, the feel, the structure, the entire process of having that, in your example, Ty, that quadplex that's right next to the $1 million home. So it does need to look and feel like the environment is being built, and communities have to have some input to that, or there's going to be a whole lot of unhappy people just saying, oh, you're putting this up, and I didn't even get an opportunity to talk about the fact that this house is blue and all the houses in this community are pink. I don't know, I'm just picking colors, right? And Alicia, I see, because we're over time. So
I do have a question for you though.
yes.
Do you think it's best to set those rules up front?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean,
that's what we're doing.
Absolutely. And actually those rules need to be set up front, either when it's before the permit is approved, before it goes to the zoning committee for approval. When the permit is submitted and the request to build is submitted, there needs to be that input from the community at that point in time.
I mean, even before that.
Oh, if we already know what the developer wants to do before he even does that, yes.
Yeah, so I like that. I like that because that fits perfectly with where we're trying to go with this plan in the next couple of years. Is establishing those rules from a land use vision perspective and from a zoning ordinance perspective.
Yes.
So when people walk in the door, you guys know and they know what our vision is and what to
absolutely
expect.
Absolutely.
We
because far east, believe it or not, in our area, Finco is bordered by W.T. Harris, Albemarle Road, Rocky River Road, and the Cabarrus County line, right? Even though that's still East Charlotte, it still looks a little different than East Charlotte, where you have Charlotte East, you have Central Avenue, the plaza, and it looks a little different. Looks different than Valentine and Noda and all those areas. But everyone needs to be able to understand that since that is kind of the way that the community looks, you either want to change that for something that everyone likes, or you want to keep it the way it is because everyone likes it the way it is. And even during that land use planning is critical to that comment.
Right.
So thank you for that information on the Silver Line, because that is a point that I forgot to mention earlier about where that Silver Line is going, which again is just missing a huge part of Far East Charlotte. So,
well, thank you, Vanetta, for ending on a high note. Definitely, the goal of these conversations and the goal since we started this plan is to make sure we hear from you and that we respond and definitely communicate the process moving forward so you can stay engaged. I think we have this huge opportunity in our community to really have the community to drive our vision, to put it into policy that informs our decision making, to get to the vision and create the place that we want to see in the future. And so, again, we thank you for your participation. We have your information. You will definitely be engaged moving forward. Our website will be updated periodically, definitely more often these days than not, with opportunities for engagement and definitely how you can stay engaged with your elected and appointed officials. Again, next step in the process is a public comment session on Monday. If you have not signed up to speak, that's up to you whether you want to do that or not. You can also just send an email, but have your voice heard. The things we talked about tonight, please don't hesitate to share, because again, this is our city, our future, our plan, and we definitely need your voices in this process. So again, thank you so much. Thank you to all my teammates for hanging on a little bit after hours today, and we'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.
thank you. Great job.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.